League can be toxic, stressful, and most of the time frustrating, but what if someone changed all that? This is my off-meta account where I'm gonna play weird builds for 10 hours and see if I can climb the ranks, but most importantly, have some fun playing League of Legends. Alright, so let's talk about AP Xin Zhao. This build revolves around Xin Zhao's passive. It scales with AP so you heal a ton and become deceptively tanky. He also has AP scalings on a lot of his other skills, which means you still do okay damage. For my runes, I went lethal tempo because the faster I attack, the faster I'm able to heal with my passive. But I do think some other runes, like maybe Conqueror, could also be good. For our build, we want to start with Guanxu's Rageblade. It gives attack speed, damage, and its double attack stacks your passive faster, which just means you heal more. Next is Riftmaker because it gives you healing, AP, and HP, which is pretty much just perfect for this build. Your next two items are Spirit Visage and Zhonya's Hourglass. Spirit Visage gives you even more healing, and Hourglass is just kinda broken. And your last item is either Jock Show for tank, Death Cap if you're super fed, or Nashor's Tooth. Before you ask why Nashor's Tooth isn't my first item, there are two reasons. One, Nashor's Tooth has a terrible build path for Xin Zhao and you're really weak early game, and two, Guanxu's just has more damage and healing in the early game once it's finished. And you can't really build both at the start of the game because then you're just way too squishy. So anyway, I jumped into my first ranked game and quickly realized that before I actually start building AP, Xin Zhao is just his normal self. But once you get some attack speed and Riftmaker, your playstyle changes dramatically. Your damage goes down, but your healing goes way up. I mean, you're able to confidently just run into fights, and as long as you aren't super far behind, the enemy team just doesn't have enough damage to kill you. And with that, I won my first game, and because of the rank reset, I was Silver 1 again. I will say, I think one of the saving graces of this build is just how strong Xin Zhao is early game. I mean, he is great in skirmishes, and he gives you time to snowball and buy a few items. But game 2 is also when I realized how weak this build is on one item. You really need Riftmaker to give you tanky stats so you don't die immediately. This is actually why I didn't build Guanxu's and Nashor's Tooth early game, because the longer you delay your Riftmaker, the longer you delay actually becoming a champion. But look at the difference after I buy Riftmaker. My team is down 12 to 22 and I'm just 3 and 5, but now that I finished arguably my most important item, not only do I do more damage, but I can survive this entire team fight. Oh, look at the healing! Look at the moves! Faker! What was that? Oh, god damn, dude. And things only got better from there. I mean, this is a 1v3 where I not only get 2 kills, but I also out-heal a fucking Dr. Mundo and make him run away. Guess who has all the healing in the fucking world, bitch? Me. You can't kill me. And yeah, once you get Spirit Visage, the game is just over for the enemy team. I'm literally healing over 300 HP every 3 auto attacks, and that's through grievous wounds most of this fight. But the more I used this build, the weirder it felt, because you are so strong in the early and late game, but there's this weird middle period when you only have one item where you're actually super weak. So from minutes like 10 to 20, you're actually in danger of accidentally throwing games by thinking you're unkillable when you really aren't yet. But again, as soon as you finish building Riftmaker, you're just able to do whatever you want. That is until I started playing against things that countered this build, but that's later in the video. For now, things are going pretty well. I'm gonna be honest, I saw a few clips online of AP Xin Zhao out-healing the enemy tower and winning 1v3s, which is why I wanted to do it in the first place. That being said, I went into this challenge pretty skeptical. But now that I've actually played the build, I am so surprised at how good it actually turned out to be. And once I figured out the build path that worked for me the best, it's like the stars aligned and I became an unstoppable force and an immovable object. And apparently the enemy team was a fan of my build too. And just like that, I was gold 3 after my placements. The next day I got on ready to have even more fun playing League of Legends. But my first game kinda got derailed pretty much immediately. This was the first game I actually played pretty poorly, but luckily Jinx was super fed and we won the game anyway. And that game really helped me understand the biggest weakness of this build. If you fall behind early, you are super weak. I mean, up until this point, I had been ahead, or at least even during the early game, but after falling behind in the last one, I realized that this build can be really hit or miss. So if you do decide to play this build, just remember, if you fall behind early game, you're gonna be about as tanky as a piece of wet toilet paper and do as much damage as a spaghetti noodle. That being said, weaknesses or not, I won my first 6 games in a row with this build. But after that, this challenge started going downhill, even if this game started off pretty well. We'll take it, I don't care if I die, we got a quadra kill, baby. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was pretty strong this game and was able to heal and survive fights I had no business surviving. But this was the first game where I was ahead, but I just wasn't able to carry. But it's okay, these games happen. But then they just kept happening, and happening, and happening. And because I was the jungler, I was usually the person who got blamed whenever the game was lost, even though I was a part of like 70% of the kills this game. I mean, I will admit, I got out-jungled in some of these games, but I'm not the only reason we were losing 5-17 in 13 minutes. Oh wait, 7-17 after I got this double kill. I mean, we kill her, that's pretty free. Thank you for the ult, Leona. Tilt aside, I still had a few good games. Some games just went better than others, and I don't really know why that is. To be honest, like I've said in other videos, my mental is probably the weakest part of my game, and it's something I've really been trying to work on. And I don't know what I expected. I was going an off-meta build in the role that gets flamed the most, but I think just after having such a good first 6 games, I was not mentally prepared to start losing like this. Again, this is something that I've really tried to improve on as a player, and if you've watched my streams, you know I have some really high highs where nothing can tilt me, and some really low lows where I get tilted even when I win. But hey, even when I'm tilted, I can enjoy a funny interaction sometimes. Oh, I didn't know that's how that worked. Anyway, internal revelations aside, not all of these games started out bad. In fact, some of them actually started pretty well. I was ahead on objectives, I was stronger than the enemy jungler, so I was able to get even more objectives, but then the enemy team made a really smart play and snuck Baron. And you see, these kind of games don't tilt me. It was actually just a really good play call by the enemy team. Honestly, respect. I can't be mad about that. That was a good Baron call. There were also some games where we were super far behind, but out of nowhere we won this big team fight, bringing us back into the game, giving us hope that maybe this game was still winnable, just for the enemy AD carry to go crazy in the next fight, get a quadra kill, and destroy our hopes and dreams. There were also some games where a weird interaction early game made an already tilted E-core even more frustrated, which made me play bad, and even I knew it. This is the first game where I think that I legitimately played really bad. And then there were some games I fell super far behind and just wasn't able to do anything. So overall, how would I rate this Xin Zhao build? Honestly, I would probably give it like a 6 out of 10. Don't get me wrong, this build was fun, and when you're ahead, you feel really unkillable, but it just has so many weaknesses. First, if the enemy team has grievous wounds, your healing is significantly reduced. It's just no one really built it against me in the first few games. Second, if the enemy team has a lot of CC, you can't auto-attack, which means you're not able to heal and you can just get bursted down. And last, this build just doesn't do that much damage. You have enough to kill squishy targets, but you're mostly just a tank with a consistent knockup. I mean, watch this fight here against Shogath, where I am 5-1, I have Gwinsu's and Riftmaker, but I'm still almost out-damaged by Cho'Gath's Sunfire burn damage. I do think this build into certain comps can be very good, notably squishy comps with low CC. This allows you to get a ton of healing while also still being a kill threat. But overall, I think that Xin Zhao's normal build is just better like 90% of the time. It's got more damage and about as much survivability with items like Eclipse, Sundered Skies, and Steric's Gauge. In the end, I lost a lot of my final games, but in my defense, I was ace in 4 of my 7 losses, which I know doesn't mean too much, but I definitely don't think I was why we lost most of these games. And despite the ups and downs, I was able to win my last game, even though I didn't play particularly well. And at the end of AP Xin Zhao, I finished Gold 3.